It's been called the cornerstone of our democracy. That would be elections, and guaranteeing that they are run fairly and counted properly. But it's also kind of a cornerstone of the national and even Idaho GOP agenda to question if those things are guaranteed. Even when our chief election officials consistently say widespread fraudulent voting is not a thing. Our state's fighting the same battle, which is why Republicans in the State Affairs Committee, well, today they passed a bill to give the Attorney General more powers to investigate possible illegal voting. But is that a problem in the Gem State? Well, not that it has been revealed. And there might be a problem, though, with this bill because the sponsors left the state's election office, who's supposed to be in charge of elections, completely out of the process.
Creating new laws relies on a culmination of classes.
Welcome back to House State Affairs.
Starting with the problem.
Potential election crimes.
Moving to the answer.
Which is the Idaho Election Crimes Act.
Capped with reason.
We are maintaining our republic by protecting our election process.
A recurring concern.
I would ask you to
Joe Alfieri.
support this.
Revamping statewide election fraud investigations. You'd think it was ran by all the big players.
It's just unfortunate in this bill, none of the sponsors ever came and talked to us.
Phil McGrain's Idaho's chief election officer.
Yeah.
And he didn't get a word in edgewise.
It's fairly unique in terms of the legislation because it's all housed within the Attorney General's office. At no point does it mention the Secretary of State's office. At no point does it mention the county clerk's offices, the people who are actually involved in the elections.
So what is the problem, I guess, if this bill becomes law and the AG is granted this extra step of power?
It raises questions about whether we're enforcing the laws as the way they are, and I can say at the local level we are.
The bill is modeled after other states, including Florida. But the Florida Secretary of State's office oversees that election integrity office, not the AG.
It will be impossible for this group to do any of its work without working with us who are working in elections.
McGrain knows that because his office already investigates fraudulent votes.
We reach out to law enforcement, not to prosecutors or the Attorney General, to continue to do that legal legwork, and then it gets passed off to the attorneys to go enforce it in the courtroom. And really, that's probably what we need to see happen here.
Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador told the 208 he did not ask for this legislation, but he's not complaining about it either.
Thank you, Secretary McGrain. Are there questions?
And neither are his supporters in the legislature.
Does it not raise a separation of powers concern? The department responsible to execute or to carry out the election would also be responsible to investigate or prosecute?
The Attorney General and I are both members of the executive branch.
It's also worth noting the Attorney General serves as the attorney for the Secretary of State, so you just kind of have this unusual relationship in this instance.
That's not to say election integrity doesn't deserve attention.
The narratives that are out there,
Perhaps a more nuanced approach.
it isn't rampant. We only see it in small numbers.
But the big numbers in this committee
The Secretary will call the roll.
accepted the bill
Yes.
as written.
And House Bill 470 will be sent to the floor.
Secretary McGrain was the only person in that committee room that has ever investigated an election crime. And he isn't against the idea. More resources and people for elections to keep them secure, it's more than welcome. He just wishes the bill has written a different way and involved election officials in that process. Now, the other side of this, Brian, Representative Joe Alfieri gave an analogy. He says, when a bank gets robbed, you don't go to the bank for them to investigate the crime that happened against them. You go to law enforcement. I guess in this case, it'd be the AG.
Yeah, well, that's because that's not their job. They deal with banks. They're not law enforcement. But like when, let's say a college has an issue with conforming to NCAA rules, they look into it themselves first, right? And then if they need to, they go outside to kind of get it verify or whatever. But to use that analogy, it seems doesn't work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the bill also grants a lot of information. So in order to carry out these investigations, you would need documents, access to those sorts of things. Well, the AG's office would then get that if this became law, because they would need to do their jobs as a group separate from the elections office. Seems that there's kind of a difficulty there. We'll see if it gets changed or tweaked.
And as you said, Secretary McGrain isn't opposed to it. He just wishes he would have been consulted on it. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew.